Introducing ISO Color Edge. Precision is essential for any professional working with images. Whether you're an artist, a retoucher, or a visual effects specialist, you need to know that what you see at the start of a project is precisely what you'll get at the end. Color Edge monitors give consistent, reliable accuracy that guarantee no surprises within your color workflow. So what you see in real life is what you see on screen, and what you see on screen is what you see in real life. That's precisely why professionals all over the world trust ISO Color Edge for their image creation. ISO Color Edge. Discover living, breathing color.
Wow, photographing the way I do, but with my colors, this will change everything.
I got to see each frame, each position of its wing, and they're so beautiful that I have never seen before.
Being able to move quickly and working at my brain's pace and getting those shots in the moment. Having this camera allows you to go out and create the way you want to create.
Until you use it, you cannot even imagine what you have missed.
It's something I've never seen before in my entire life. It's something totally different.
Nikon Z6 III. Outperform.
Judges, find out some more about them, find out more about kind of what they look for when they judge, and really help still get some advice to help you with your entries. So let's talk for a little bit about the Photographic Prize. This year, massive. We've got 25 categories. Last year we had 19. Our categories go across a whole bunch of different divisions. We've added underwater and birds. So I used to be part of the wildlife category. We have a creative portrait that sits alongside classic portrait. We have a sport category that kind of comes out of our documentary category. We've split landscape into creative and natural landscape, and we've added a maternity category as well. So we're hitting so many different genres of photography, and we're kind of getting to represent a couple of them in a really good way. So hopefully there's some photography or some categories that land really neatly with the work that you do. Now, entries close on the 31st of May. We'll be doing round one judging over the weeks following that. And then our top 30 images, they move on to live judging. And we're going to run live judging, hopefully with a server that's much healthier than tonight, from the 9th to the 31st of July, where we're going to have 7 judge panels going through one category at a time. That schedule will get published closer to the event. So keep your eyes peeled, but it's not available yet. Now, we're going to have, for every category, an Australian winner and an international winner. and for every division, and then an overall as well, which is really good, as well as prizes for students, including the overall student winner and the overall educational institution. Like last year, we're online only this year. Last year was incredibly successful. And look, I love print. I love going to, I'd say all of our judges are all print fanatics as well, especially Dario, who's a print king. As much as I loved print, moving to online gave us a whole bunch of things like being able to involve judges from around the world. So I'm really excited that we get to do this. Now, early bird closes at the end of the month as well. So if you are thinking about entering, you can buy your early bird entry package and then add your images later if you want to. So that'll help you save some money as well. And I have to say, so far, entries are tracking better than they were last year. This is going to be a really, really good year. So I cannot wait. Now, tonight, as I mentioned before, if you're just kind of tuning in, unfortunately, we've had a server problem and it's a pretty big one. So we're unable to access our server, which means we can't get in and look at the images people have submitted for critique. We can't critique them. We can't do all that normal stuff. So what we're going to do instead is while we have this panel of excellent judges sitting here, we're going to spend some time with them to learn some more about them and also talk to them about the judging experience and what they're looking for when they judge images and to kind of help you get into their heads a little bit so that you're more prepared when it comes time to choose your images and to enter them. But let's start by introducing them. And because I am super simple, I'm going to go in alphabetical order, which means, Ange, we're going to start with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. But you got to come off mute if you're going to do it. That's once. I'm only going to say that 3 times. So that's the first time.
That's fine. I just come out of the dark and now I've got this light shining at me. So that's sort of blinding me. But yes, so my name's Angela Adams. I come from London, but I'm actually currently living in Norfolk in the UK, which is on the east coast. Lots of sheep, lots of animals, not much else. Pretty much like Australia, I would imagine. So I am a commercial photographer and I've been shooting commercially since 2007. But I also used to have a social studio where I shot weddings and babies and dogs and all manner of things. But commercial seems to really click with me. So that's me in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thanks, Ange. Ben, you look like you're alphabetically next. Let's hear a bit about you.
Hello, I'm Benjamin Liu. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. I am a commercial advertising photographer, much like Angela, and I've been doing this since 2008. Most exciting thing that I photographed in recent times was a truck tire. I'll leave it at that.
Wow. Hold me back, Ben. That sounds pretty exciting.
You can loop back to that anytime.
Excellent. All right, everyone, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to pepper Ben with questions about his truck tire because that sounds pretty exciting. Diana, let's hear something about you.
So I'm from Adelaide, just not very far from Ben, actually. I am predominantly an underwater photographer. That was where I started out, and I've done other stuff. I've done some family stuff. I've done a few weddings. I've done. I was a heartfelt photographer for around 9 years, so that's obviously small babies. But I'm back to mostly underwater again. I do macro and super macro underwater photography. I go away a lot. Unfortunately, we've had our algae bloom here in South Australia, so there's not much diving here right now. So I tend to hop on a plane quite a bit and go and get my fix somewhere else. Yeah, so that's my main gig. What I'm looking for in a photo, I think initially it's that initial impact of the image, whether it's beautiful or whether it's documentary style. I'm looking for sort of technical abilities and originality, stuff like that.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely dig into what all of our judges are looking for in photos because we got a bit of time to play tonight for sure.
Okay.
I'm really excited to have you here, Diana, because you're one of the judges that's going to be just championing our underwater category. And like one of the things that I really like that we can do in Ozprize is have judges that are experts in a category judging. So if you're an underwater photographer and there are technical things that are challenging for you, you know that our judges are going to understand that too. So
Okay.
that's pretty special. I'm glad you're here for it.
Yeah, cool.
Let's go on the other side of the planet to Dario. Dario, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dario Righetto, and as you can tell, I come from Italy, and I'm a wedding photographer and videographer, print expert, and illustrator. So all of these things should suggest to you that I'm very much prone to look for stories into things, and therefore, because I tend to get away with the fairies, I also adopt a very solid structure when I look and judge at a picture. And with structure, I mean, elements and blocks that I can check and I can provide, something digestible for the audience and the author.
Cool, awesome. And what are you wearing, Dario? What's that logo on your shirt there? Like,
Oh, thank you for pointing out my age. And for those of you that don't need an explanation of subtitles, you're welcome on board. For those of you that have no idea what's this, well, we were there where you were and there, and we saw it becoming a reality. So, yeah, it's a Commodore 64. I would say the milestone among the personal home computers in the early 80s. I don't want to add anything now. That's enough.
That's right.
Early
So if you're at home and
80s.
if you recognize that logo, then welcome to the Old Nerds Club. So the water's warm. Come on in. Thanks, Dario. All right, Faru, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm from Melbourne. It was a bit stormy, rainy. I'm glad it's done now. I'm a visual artist, fine art, portrait, and fashion photographer, and also educator. And I'm a studio full-time photographer, studio visual artist as well, so I barely see sun. And yeah, I'm Iranian and I've been in Australia for 15 years almost, and I've been part of this photography competition and judging, I think it's from 2015. And I think it's the first time actually I met Chris in AGP was 2015 as well.
Mm-hmm. Has it been, oh, wow. Okay, we're not talking about how old we are again, are we? This is like,
I think we are, because the Commodore 64, I was like, I remember that one. We used to play.
This is where you say, I've seen that in a museum. Don't say that. That's terrible. Okay. All right. Speaking of museums, Johan.
Oh, thanks.
You know what a Commodore 64 is, so, yeah.
A bounty of knowledge. So I'm based in Christchurch, New Zealand, and I've been here for a very long time. I predominantly used to photograph weddings, and from weddings I gathered a lot of skills in seeing and looking. So I moved from there into portraits and architecture. I like architecture a lot because there's less people involved. I've been judging for well over 25 years. I'm also a sort of a closet poet. I just love seeing the work of others and appreciating what they're trying to say. I see myself as a storyteller.
Awesome, Johan. Thank you. Last, but absolutely not least, from our list of judges today is Lisa. So Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Forgive my voice. It could be quite timely, actually, that we're not running the whole critique this evening. I'm a photo, video, projection artist based here in Meanjin, Brisbane. I'm a graduate of the Queensland College of Art. I have a conceptual landscape and portrait practice. I'm very interested about people and place and people in place. I've just finished my 5th year of teaching contemporary photo media at Central Queensland University, and this is my 3rd year judging the Australian Photographic Prize, and enjoyed actually judging with Chris a number of years ago as well, one of the TAFE prizes as well. So I'm really interested in student work and very much enjoy teaching, and a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. So if you're at home listening to kind of the huge variety that we have on our judging panel, this is this kind of stuff we look for Ozprize. So there's quite a lot of experience and quite a lot of varied experience. People with, teachers, practitioners, very experienced judges, and it's excellent to see these people coming together on a judging panel. Now we've also got Mel Sinclair, who you might know as one of our judges from last year, but Mel's got a bit of a different role this year. So Mel, do you want to just take a couple minutes or 30 minutes? No, probably not 30 minutes. We'll go. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Chris. I am a landscape and creative photographer from Brisbane, and I'm a bit of an artist too. So I've judged Australian Photographic Prize before. I do a lot of camera club judging here in Southeast Queensland. But this year I've taken a bit of a different role, and I'm sitting behind the scenes as part of the management crew for the Australian Photographic Prize. So you'll see me on live streams, you'll see me in the background, you may get prodded by me from time to time for something. So yeah, I'm joining part of the fun and helping these awesome, crazy people get this thing running. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you all around.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. We've also got Daniel and Nathan Bingham, who are working behind the scenes tonight. Nathan is driving our live stream, and Daniel is being driven crazy by server problems. So if you've just tuned in, a little bit of an update. We have unfortunately had a bit of a catastrophic server failure this evening, which seriously probably started about 50 minutes ago. So just in time to get ready for the critique. Unfortunately, it means that we can't run the critique tonight. All of your images are safely locked into the server and we can't get to them. So I can't even open them on Zoom to show you. So what we're going to do, it's pretty likely we'll hold your entries if you submitted images for tonight's critique over for the second critique. I may look at trying to schedule in an extra critique as well. So we're still kind of trying to figure out our path through this. So if you were logging in to YouTube tonight to see your images up, I'm really sorry that you're not going to see a critique tonight. I know a lot of you will have made time for this. And it's instead of getting to do that, we're going to hear some advice from our judges to really help you get your entries together. So watch the community page and we'll put some announcements in about what our next steps are for this critique and for any makeup critiques. All right, so look, we have entrants right now. If you're thinking about entering, you've got your images. You've probably got maybe you've got a pile of images and you're trying to work your way through them. Maybe you're going to go out and shoot some images, but we're all going to come from different places. I would love to hear from a couple of you on the topic of how you choose the images that you're going to enter. And Faru, I might start with you because for those of you that don't know Faru's work, she wins every award that you can win. It's all over the place. She's really well known around the world in not just professional photography competition circles, but in other art prizes and other photography prizes. So it feels like curating the work that you want to enter is a really important step. What goes through your mind, Faru, when you're working on getting something ready to enter?
Thank you so much, Chris. When I wanted to choose, because I started to, first thing I should say, when I moved to Australia 2010, I guess. So I started my business, but no one knows me. So I started to enter into photography award to build up my resume. So the first thing I've done that. But then I noticed that how much it was important for me to entering the photography competitions, because it's not only helped me to improve my images, my techniques, but also helped me to build up my business very quick as well. So what actually I consider when I wanted to enter my photos to award, I mostly goes with what kind of genre I wanted to enter, how much impact I can get from my images. Probably I put so much time beforehand planning for it and shoot, and maybe I have to reshot it many times if I'm going for a heavy composite image. So probably there are so much technique, post-production I have to consider. What exactly I'm looking for my images is creativity, originality, the technical aspect, the story behind it, and how I can create an impact in the few seconds that judges looking at my images. So that's all sort of thing I always consider in my image.
Okay, that makes sense. Ben, you're a bit of a serial competition enterer as well, and I know you have a lot of really, really good work, but at the point where you've got like 10 images and you know you want to submit 4 or 5 of them, how do you narrow it down? How do you choose what you're going to submit?
I've always been pretty random when it comes to my competition entering because I don't create images for awards. Like I normally just create the image and then I decide then that I'll put it into awards because I'm pressured by a deadline. That's how I roll. But then once I get past that point, I guess like I'm always sort of flagging in my head which images I want to enter, and then I'll sort of start there. If you're going for a category, I can't remember what the thing is with categories here, but sometimes you might want to categorize them into a category you want to enter. I have in the past sacrificed entering an image that's powerful on its own to benefit a group of images for potentially a category win. Never really gone my way, but that's sort of in theory, that's sort of what I do. So editing your selection down, I think is pretty important if you want to go for a category win. But other than that, like I think I've always sort of just had individual images that I try and fit into a category somewhere and just make sure you abide by the rules. Actually, the first thing I ever do when it comes to a competition is I look at the terms and conditions. That's the first thing that I do. Terms and conditions. Really, really super important because there are so many image grab like competitions out there, and I enter competitions like just hemorrhaging money entering competitions. So that's always the most important thing. And then you look at, I love the terms and conditions for like Odds Prize and stuff like that because they're so in depth. And in fact, looking at these terms, you can sort of figure out where your work sits, and that's also really quite important. So I guess I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to touch on something you said there because you talked about like how you curate things for a category, and there are a couple of different ways different competitions work. So in Australian Photographic Prize, one image can win a category. So in fact, our international winner last year entered one image, and that won its category, its division, and then went on to win overall. So for Australian Photographic Prize, it is image by image. And if you're familiar with entering our competition, you'd kind of know that from previous years. There are other competitions that are portfolio based. So your top 3 or your top 4 images in a category can make their way up. And that's the thing that Ben's talking about. And it makes total sense. Sometimes you're curating to get a set of images. Not for us, though, for this particular one. Like we're choosing, you're going to want to probably choose your strongest image. And I really like what you said about reading the rules and reading terms and conditions, because that's the thing. Like, unfortunately, every year we do have people that maybe don't read the rules and they don't realize, oh, I've entered an image that is too old. Like we have a capture limit, which I think is 5 years from the 1st of January of the competition. So if I'm wrong, Daniel will correct me, but I think our timeout is images this year need to be taken from the 1st of January 2021 onwards. So anything that's older than that, if you submit it, unfortunately, we're going to have to disqualify it. And that happens every year. So it's one of those things to make sure you're reading the rules, understanding the category definitions. When you go to submit your images, the rules will show up as part of the image thing, so you can double check them there as well. But that's super important. So Daria, I got a question for you. If you're judging a category and you see some images go by that are very similar, and you probably can guess that it's the same photographer entering some images that are very close to one another, do you have any advice for someone in that situation? Like as an entrant, is
Yeah, sure.
is that a great idea, or is that not such a great idea?
No, I'd say that is not such a great idea, and thank you for asking about that, because as we discussed before, even before going live today, impact is a very crucial factor. And once you get there and you get the panel to look at your work, and then there is another submission that, as you said, is clearly makes sense as part of a sequence of the same project, the same thing. It's a depleted outreach on the panel, and basically a missed opportunity. So I rather ask you to think twice, and reconsider and flip upside down the pictures and do all your considerations before entering and pick the right choice. Either you go super strategic, as Ben was hinting before, and you read everything and you try to have the best fit, or you go with the heart and you just sail on with your idea, just trust it. But yeah, don't mingle things, don't dilute the power of your work.
I've definitely made that mistake before where I've had an image that was pretty strong and an image that was kind of strong, and I entered them both. And I think as a judge, if you only saw one of those, you'd go, wow, that's amazing. But once you've seen a second, it's taken power away from the first and it's not as special anymore. So I've hopefully learned from my mistake. I don't do that anymore, but that's definitely something. So when we're talking about reading the rules as well, so we've all touched on that. If you read the rules last year and you've memorized them, read them again this year because rules do change. Technology changes all the time. Our rules change all the time. So it is good to reacquaint yourselves with those. That includes category rules. So sometimes we'll talk specifically about what you can include in a category and what you can't. Just read the rules, read the rules, read the rules would be my advice. Make sure you do that because it's really sad when we come across an image that breaks a rule. So make sure you're going over those as well. All right, excellent. Thank you, Dario. I guess I'm going to open the floor. Is there anyone else when we're thinking about as an entrant what we're going to submit for our images? Is there anyone else? Johans? I called you Johans. If you really want to get on Johan's good side, you call him Your Highness. It's almost the same thing. So he knew I was going to say that the moment I started that sentence, which is fab. Johan, you've got some advice on selecting images.
Yeah. When I used to photograph weddings so much, I made a point of having a folder on my desk where I just threw images that I kind of liked so that I didn't get to the point where it was coming to competition award times and I was going, I know I've got an image and it's a bride on something and I'm sure I can find it. And having that folder there as a library from which I can then pull the best of is so much better than living in hope of finding something.
So you kind of shovel your images in when you think there's some potential as the year goes on.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. Does anyone else do that? Because I've heard of a few people that do something. Yeah, Mel's nodding. Mel, you enter a lot of competition. So how big is this folder of images that you are curating as the year goes on?
Yeah, it's quite voluminous and it grows per competition. So I'm always considering which image might suit which competition, whether it's my camera club or whether it's an art prize or whether it's a photographic prize of some sort. So I'm always having, I guess, that list of maybes constantly piling up. Mm-hmm. And I'm always choosing work that is both safe and divisive. So yeah, the strange things that pop out every now and then, the left of centers. So at least they're there and they're part of my thought process.
Yeah, I think sometimes going safe, like going with an image that could crash and burn or divide a panel or be amazing, that's often the secret to the stuff that does really, really well. Doesn't always do really, really well. Sometimes those ones can crash and burn, but if you're willing to play the risk, then the outcome can be really good. Lisa, I know you've got something to add.
Just following on from Johan and Mel, and that idea of having a folder that you are continually adding to is really fantastic because it then means when you come to the deadline, you're not rushed, you're not making a decision about an image. You've had, a year or however long you've taken to keep coming back to those images through the year because we see something different. And what we think when we're panicked and the deadline's in 1 hour, we perhaps don't always make a good considered choice. Whereas if we've looked at those photos, they've grown on us, or we've seen new things, or we've rejected them. We've thought, oh, actually, I thought that was great, 2 months ago. Now I don't really see anything in that, or I think I've got something that's even more resolved. And the other thing is if you allow longer time for these things, you can seek input, you can seek feedback, you can come to a critique session, and then that gives you time then to remake, take on board the feedback. If there's any sort of niggle in your own mind, what can I do to improve that or revisit that? And then you end up submitting a fully resolved work, whether it's the scary one or the divisive one or the awesome one that you think is going to win. You're entering something that is resolved to the best that you can and that you're proud of. And that's always a great feeling.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know I'm always there's a point sometimes when I'm going to enter an image where it's like I'm just over editing it now, like I'm done, I don't want to touch it anymore, and then I have to say to myself, what's going to stop a judge from giving this a gold? And it's like, oh, okay, I do have to fix that shadow, like, you know, try and be my own worst critic, and that usually helps. And you've got something you want to add as well, but you got to come off mute. That's twice.
It's really slow my end. It's not me, honestly, she said. So when I look at an image, I really create with my heart. But then if I'm entering that, I can have too much emotion involved in that. So I tend to put it to one side, come back and try to be factual, and then think like a judge and critique your image. Be your own worst critic. So look at things like impact, creativity, style, composition, presentation, center of interest, lighting, color balance, technical excellence, storytelling, subject matter, and I'll shut up, but make a list and then be your own worst critic. Go through, look at it, show it to a friend, see what they think of it, but try and remove that initial emotion, especially if you've been involved in something like a wedding and it's been such a wonderful day and you've got this really lovely feeling. We can miss things like blown highlights, block shadows. So what I'm saying really is take a step back, look at it with fresh eyes in a day or so, and then make a list of things to go through that we may find as judges. Don't give us the opportunity to mark it down. Look at it, go for it. That's me.
Yeah, that's good advice. I get stuck in that trap of being emotionally close to images that I create, and it makes me less able to critique them. So I have a couple of trusted friends who I'll say, "Can you please rip this image apart?" And they will. And now they're never able to judge it. If they were to ever see that image in a competition, they'll have to step off of it, and that's fine. But I think sometimes you do need to go and get advice from someone else. Hey, Ben, you want to add something?
Yeah, actually, it was just you said what I was going to say. But I guess further to that, if you are going to ask someone else, which I always find it really helpful, make sure they're not judging your competition. Because if you know they're going to like it, then it's probably better that they don't know it's your image, because otherwise they have to step off the panel. So just also edit who you ask.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a really important point there. As judges for Australian Photographic Prize, it's anonymous. We don't know entrants' names, to the point where in the system, even though I can roam around the back end of the system, I can't see entrants' names. They're hidden from me. And I'm not even one of the ones doing the judging. So we work pretty hard to make sure that entries are anonymous. And that means that judges don't know who else entered things. Sometimes images have been to other competitions and people are aware. And so one of the things that we allow our judges to do is to step off of an image. So if you've watched our live judging from last year, you see every now and again an image comes up and then a judge might say, I need to step off this one. It's like, okay, so, you know, Ben, step off. Lisa, can you come in place of Ben? We give our judges the opportunity basically to step off an image for any reason they might need to. And it could be because they know the photographer very well and they're, you know, they don't want to be biased or have any bias creep in. It could be because they have judged that image so much that it's like the impact is gone and they can't do it fairly. It could be because the subject matter is currently really emotionally close to something that's big to them and they can't be unbiased either. So that's one of those freedoms that we give our judges, is to step off so that we make sure that our team is actually effective at judging images as a team, and that usually works pretty well, I think. So let's talk about something else. There's a new thing this year, which at Australian Photographic Prize, I think since our inception, we've had context statements or little information statements for several of our categories. So, for example, the commercial category or the wildlife category, and you can use that to give some more information about the image to inform the judges. So for a commercial category, that might be, it's a commissioned image for use in print or something. Like, you could say something like that, and it just gives the judge a little more context. But new this year for us is allowing an optional title on each image. And it's not something we've done for Australian Photographic Prize before. It's really pretty normal in the camera club judging world to have titles for folks that have judged an Australian Photographic Prize or APA or the Iris Awards. It's new. We've got a couple of judges on tonight that have judged for the Society's judging and other competitions in Europe where it's totally normal to have titles. So I think I might actually, Ange, I'm going to lean on you first. like if you have advice to give an entrant about putting a title on an image, and to give them the best chance of success, what advice would you give them? And Dario, I'm going to come to you next as well, because you're both pretty familiar with titles. But Ange, let's start with you.
So, as an ex-English teacher, words mean an awful lot to me, and I've seen titles make a difference in maybe raising a score 1 or 2 points. They can add humor, they can make you look at the image in a different way. But what I'm saying is here, keep the title relevant. Ensure that it actually fits with the story that you're trying to tell, but be careful. Be aware that your image needs to tell that story on its own without the title. So you need to enhance with the title. But don't be glib. Don't try and be clever and think they might get this. This relates to a movie. This relates to something else. Try and keep it really relevant to what you want to say. Try not to use ChatGPT, because then everybody gets the same sort of titles when you come out and you put a prompt in. So if you've got, I'm thinking of an example here, if you've got a landscape, something I've seen so much is a title called Shaft of Light. Think of something that's a bit different. Think of something that will really draw the viewer in. Try and create an emotive link with your words that link with your pictures. It's not easy. When it works, wow, it can be wonderful and it can blow you away. And I'm also quite happy if people just put untitled, because if you put the wrong title, it can actually detract from that image as well.
Yep, completely, totally agree. Dario, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, Angela just gave a masterclass about titles. What can I add? Well, I'd say that I totally agree, Angela, about the fact that titles are a wonderful extra on the picture, but only if they work as an extra. And so otherwise, either you might sound banal or meaningless the picture. You're not really doing any favor to your work. But if you have a clever idea, and there's one tip only that I can add to what Angela nicely put before, and it's I'm sure there is something going on in the picture. You took that picture, you have engineered that thing, you have envisioned the whole composition. There is something going on. Go for it, because even if it's another lighthouse in a stormy coast with a boat and the shaft of light coming through the clouds, straight on the, and Angela said, don't call it like that, because probably in the first place, the reason why you have put together that composition was probably something else. There was something emotionally connected with you. So go dig deep inside yourself and see if you can put in words. And if you can, be clever. But please don't be kind of cheesy. Like, don't try to impress with something, that wants to call for an applause at any cost, or like, oh, that's not really how it works. It has to be a punchline. And even one word can be a punchline. But like I said, unless you have in that zone to get the 1 or 2 points more, untitled, that's pretty fine.
Yep. Right, Johan, you've got something you want to add?
Yeah, it was really a question for the people that know these things. So a descriptive title that says, here is a lighthouse, a wave, and a sailing man, is useless because it adds nothing to what you're seeing, correct? So you don't describe what you're seeing as a title.
They're nodding. So, I mean, you guys can come off mute if you want to and
So
answer directly if you like, but yeah.
That's the sin, isn't it, of titling an image, is saying, I'm telling you what you're seeing because it's there in the picture. So,
I think
this is the house on the hill. Sorry?
the only thing I'd add to that is, unless it was, say, a nature title and there was a Latin name of, say, an insect or something that you would need, then it would be descriptive, because we're not trying to be creative with the nature and the bugs. We want to help the judges understand perhaps what that is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's one of those things about having, like, we've actually split it up so there's an optional context statement for that scientific stuff for nature. So you could have a context statement, an optional one, and you could have a title in optional one. So we do split that up as well. Lisa, you've got something you want to add too.
Thanks, Chris. It's actually a question. And I'm just, or maybe a bit of a statement as well. Sometimes untitled is an actual intentional title. You know, there's a conceptual reason for calling an image untitled, you know, Untitled 75. If we think of the work of Cindy Sherman, everything is untitled. She's probably up to 1,050, I don't know. So what I'm wondering is when people are titling their work or when we're judging and the titles are being read out, if there is no title, it would be great if it's not called untitled. It'd be, you know, it's to distinguish between I've chosen not to title my work, I've called it untitled, or I've titled it and this is my title.
So there's a field when you go and enter where you can put a title in and you can leave it blank. So if you write the word untitled, that's your image's title, is the word untitled. I'm willing to bet a lot of people will write the word untitled, even though they intended to have no title. And this is what stuff we'll learn about OzPrize this year. Daniel, maybe we could add a little bit of, if it isn't already there, a little bit of hint text on that field to say, if you don't want to have a title, leave it blank. That's probably a good way to go. Fredo, you wanted to add something.
Yes, I wanted to add something to all the amazing think everyone said about the title. It really depends on the genre or the category we are entering as well. For example, if when it comes to commercial, you're talking about a campaign, you wanted to bring attention of judges, it's exactly for a campaign and what is a campaign for. When it goes for creative, sometimes mysterious or poetic or descriptive can help the image to elevate the story without really mentioning or directing, saying something about the story, but you want to enhance what exactly a story is about. So I think it's really depend on the category, and really agree. If you don't have, especially for example me, you know, English is not my motherhood language, so sometimes it would be very tricky to find exactly a word that I wanted to say. So if I can find exactly the word, I'm going with untitled and give the judges to find the story and create a dialogue with it. And I think it's a kind of not safe, but it's a kind of smart to do it as well.
I think if I'm not sure about it, for those competitions where you can enter a title, I will leave it blank, because I think I was always kind of taught, you nail your image to the wall and you walk away and it has to defend itself, which means people don't get to hear the story about the day and how it was terrible and rainy and suddenly it got nice and you went out and, oh no, I wrecked my shoe and I had to go again. And this person, no one gets to hear any of that. It's just the image. That's what they're judging. So that's how I've grown up, is not writing titles. I found it quite difficult actually to start writing them. The trick that I've found is I've started to think, if someone challenges this image and they're really excited about it, I want them to say the title. I want them to use that as part of the argument. And there's a story, I didn't get to see this, but I heard about it. So one of my images was judged in London, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And the image was called Maybe Today. And it's about someone who was kind of fighting with being housebound and depression. And they had a hard time leaving the house. And they were trying really hard to get their stuff together so they could leave the house and kind of get on with their life. And it was called Maybe Today. And the person who challenged the image they told me about it afterwards when I eventually met them a couple of years later. They said, I kept saying, maybe today is the day that I will get up. Maybe today is the day that I'll leave the house. Maybe today is the day I'll reclaim myself. So now that's become my little trick, is if I think a judge is going to get excited about it, that title becomes really important, and maybe it becomes part of their challenging technique. I don't know if that's a really good strategy, but that's the one I'm trying right now. So we'll see how we go. I do want to move on from titles pretty soon, but we've got Ange and Johan have a couple of things they want to add. So Angie?
Yeah, there was just one thing that I remembered sitting on a judging panel when someone had created a title and nobody understood what the word meant. And we spent so much time, we forgot to, well, not forgot, but we didn't give the image the time it would have had, because we're all thinking, what does this word mean? Why don't I understand it? And then there was a conversation, but it did detract. So that's all I'm saying. Just be careful. Try not to be too clever, and make sure it's an understandable word or title.
That makes sense. Johan, you want to wrap it up with
This is
last
just a
thoughts?
follow-up on what Faru was talking about, saying commercial work, often with seeing commercial work and there might be a space somewhere. Is it prudent in a title for commercial work to say text on left-hand side or something to that effect?
Right. So I would include that in the context statement. And that's one of those things where that there are two separate things that you can do for commercial, for nature, for those categories. So for a commercial category, your context statement could say text on left-hand side, or the, the media that it's used in, or, however you wanted to explain the extra stuff that was done to it or where it was seen. That's how I would use a context statement. And I think what we expect to see in a commercial category, title could be separate to that. So I think we're finding that as we're chatting right now, it may be actually just a little confusing having a title and a context statement. So that might be something we look at for next year, but we're running with it for this year. So we'll see how we go. All right, let's move on. I think we talked about titles for a little bit, and hopefully that's been some really good advice for people. And do you know what? I had another question, and it was in my head, and it was ready to go, and now it's gone, which is really terrible because I'm that good of a host. So I'll tell you what, Diana, I'm going to come to you. So we haven't really talked much about assessing images, and I'm curious from your point of view, like some judges are very technical judges. They're going to focus really hard on like sharpness and focus being sharp and like the retouching being effective and stuff like that. Some judges are very heart focused. So they're thinking about the emotion and the feeling and the story that's in an image. And some judges will kind of sit in both and draw from both of those camps. Where do you sit as a judge? What do you respond to in an image?
Well, I think, for example, when you're doing macro or super macro, if you miss the sharpness on the eye, you miss the image. Or for a sea slug, if you miss the little tentacle, you've missed the shot. I think it's really important because that's like the whole kind of point of the shot. You're very often photographing a very, very minute creature, and you've got to give it its best context. I think when you're looking at sort of wider angle, you're probably less focused on that because you're much more looking at maybe a story. So you're looking at perhaps a coral reef and the beauty of the coral reef and perhaps the sunbeams. So you really need to be looking in a wide angle as you look at it as more of a landscape. So you need your background, your subject, and your foreground sort of thing. And I think that's really important. But yeah, I think definitely for macro and super macro, you need to be able to show the sharpness and you need to be able to show the animal as creatively as you can. And I think this is where sort of beauty and technicality come into it, because it might take you an hour to shoot one creature, and that when you reckon that you got this massive person with a tank on their back and a camera that's huge, and you're looking at something that's the size of half a fingernail and you're chasing this bloody thing around the reef, it better be worth it. Yeah.
That's you're painting a picture. I don't think I'm going to be an underwater photographer anytime soon. So I'm just not that patient. So
patience is a virtue, I can tell you.
There you go. So what I'm taking from that is so for macro and super macro, for example, you could have all the story in the world, but if you don't have the technical aspects right, you're probably going to miss, because that's really important for that genre of photography.
Yeah.
Dario, I've got a question for you, Dario. So let's talk about portraiture. Like in the portraiture space, how important is that balance between technical and story or emotion?
Oh, very much so. Although maybe for different reasons, but nowadays, and I'm not even kidding. Both of the words has to be mingled perfectly together, because the level of the refinement you can see now in portraiture is just outstanding. It's absolutely outstanding. And if that's not enough to blow up your mind, the creativity, the idea behind that is even more mind-blowing than ever. And so yeah, both have to coexist. It's also true though that it's not necessarily the case that you need to be super, you know, thinking outside the box and being super duper every time you nail a portrait. There is a criteria that I tend to apply to almost nearly any category, really, which is what I call the classics, like this, the classics and the new things. But when you go for a classic, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. Actually, think about figurative sports like, I don't know, ice skating or gymnastic. They do their routines, there are moves, there are tricks, there are things, and it's kind of out of a book, right? So everybody, the judges are expecting that thing, that toe loop, that whatever the move. You have to execute that perfectly, and then you score high. Same applies to photography. If you're gonna go for a classic, make sure that it's actually pin sharp in every possible technical way. And then all is left is for us to appreciate a very nice, beautiful classic portrait that speaks loud and we can see the character, the nature, the soul of the subject. Vice versa, if you go super creative, well, there's maybe a little bit more of a margin to negotiate some maybe. It depends how far you can go on the other side.
Like I know, I mean, you're pretty familiar with my work, and sometimes I will break a lot of rules and I'll do something that's not, it's not a normal portrait. And sometimes as judges, when you're presented with something that is innovative or breaks rules, you're not so worried about whether the eyes are sharp anymore. You're kind of looking at this thing that's been presented to you and it's writing its own rules and it's making you think about story and emotion. So there is, I wish there was like a one answer fits all, but there kind of isn't. But everything you said about if you're shooting a classic, it better be pretty solid. Like, you know, if it's you're doing a cityscape at night, which is something that a lot of people have shot, and you're entering that as an image, because it maybe isn't so innovative, you've got to make sure that your technicals are bang on for it to be competitive is probably a big deal. I'm actually going to ask Johan a question in a minute, but we're just kind of at the 1 hour mark, and I was going to mention to anyone that's tuned in, they're going, "Hey, you're not looking at any images. What's happening?" We've unfortunately had a problem with our Australian Photographic Prize software tonight, so it's the first time that we've ever had anything like this. I'm kind of glad it's happening on a critique night and not on a live judging night, but unfortunately, it means that we don't have access to the images to critique. So instead of doing that, and we'll hold those images over for a future critique, and we'll talk about on the community page what our strategy is going to be there once we nail it down. But while we've got this amazing panel of judges, we're picking their brains to help you as entrants. So actually, if you're watching YouTube at the moment and you have questions for our judges, feel free to leave comments, and I'll pick a couple of them to ask our judges about. So yeah, if you're on YouTube, go for it. And there's a bit of a note from Frank the Tank. Hi, Frank the Tank, saying it's so interesting as a new photographer and it's been highly valuable advice. Thank you all. So good job, judges. You're doing an amazing job. Johan, so a question for you. Have you been in that position where you've been judging say a portrait and the technicals aren't spot on, but the emotion is, and it takes you away? This feels like knowing you, those are the kinds of images sometimes that really take you.
I have. And what I'm looking for when I'm judging is I'm looking for a sense of reality. And even if it's a creative reality, you know, where somebody's invented something, but I want to feel that it could be real in some way. And I want that feeling to be strong. And if that feeling is strong enough, then it brings with it forgiveness. However, if the mistake is a lack of care, then forgiveness falls off. You know, you've got a fantastic classic portrait and there's a dust spot, or you've got something that's been over vignetted or something like that, and that can just really kill the mood, kill the feeling, and kill the sense.
So you talked about two things there. The dust spot probably wasn't a choice. The vignette probably was a choice. So, you know, I guess as entrants, you are in control of what you're entering, and you got to make those choices very consciously. Like everything, that choice of a heavy vignette is something that you've chosen to do as an entrant, and then as a judge, that could be the thing that makes it difficult to look at. So,
as a judge, we think of a number, we write it down, and then we have to talk about why that number's real. And the things that we use to justify that number are based on the impact, the look, the feel, and all those other things. And if there's a thorn in the photograph, if there's a thing that creates a problem for us, we can actually just change our minds so easily. So it's important that we need to be impressed straight away and that the photograph survives scrutiny.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dario, you have something you want to add?
Yeah, just to point out that I hope the audience figure out in this roughly hour that we have been spending time together trying to share some tips and some thoughts, how consistent we are sounding, I think, despite the different backgrounds, despite, the different genre and whatever. But I think that the first thing that you can grasp out of this conversation is the consistency throughout the panel, which I congratulate you guys for bringing it together, A, and B, I hope the entrants are seeing these as a value, which means please be confident in whoever is going to judge your work, because clearly we are serving you, but there's a lot behind that bring us together and possibly will help everyone having their work and knowledge gracefully and appropriately.
Thanks, Dario. That's really kind. I know I'm really proud of the judges that we've curated last year and this year again. And yeah, I hope there is a consistency about the way that we work with things, but I hope we all also bring our own, every judge is going to bring their own viewpoint and their own thing. And you'll see judges don't always agree. And that's one of the, to me, one of the most fun things about judging is when the challenge happens. If you've got one judge on 93 and one judge on 76, you're about to have an excellent conversation. And to me, that's way the most fun part of watching 5 judge panels. Fru, you're nodding and smiling. Did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to something exactly what you said. We are not all the time agree when we are judging, especially I can bring lots of example when me and Johan totally were the opposite side. Johan was 90, I was below, or exactly opposite. What important thing for judges when they are not angry to each other, actually, it's really good thing because it creates a dialogue about the work, and they try to convince each other what exactly point or power in this image that grab them to give that a score. And I think it's really important because in a work, even me, I can't put everything, all powerful element, like have a huge emotional and visual impact, at the same time amazing post-production, and at the same time great story, everything in one work. If I can, I'm really happy, but most of the time we can't. So as a judge, I'm always looking for what exactly power or superpower in that image that I can fight for it. Is it the story is powerful? Is it the post-production? Is the originality? Is the other things that I can fight for? And say, for example, Johan, I'm just doing it right now, and say just like Johan, I think like the story is really important than the technical part, and I bring my reason. So it's really interesting for the entrants that put something for the judges that create dialogue and fight for it, and that's how it create rise the score and take it to the next level.
That's some of that entering risky work thing, right? Like you have safe work and you have work that can be divisive. And sometimes if I'm entering, I know that actually 2 judges are probably going to hate this, and 1 judge might really go for it. And to me, that's the best thing ever because it gets that conversation going. Look, one thing I do want to say is you kind of said fight for images there, and I'm glad you said fight for images. Our judging panels, it's never a fight. This is not about a bunch of people who are having an argument with one another. The thing that we're trying to do, especially in a challenge, is we have this conversation where, you know, the person that scored highly is going to talk, and the person that scored maybe a little lower is going to talk, and someone else in the middle. That whole discussion is so that that panel gets a better understanding of that image. So every single judge understands it more deeply. And you'll hear it all the time. You'll hear one judge who's challenging kind of talk about what they see, and then one of the other judges say, I'm really glad you challenged this. I didn't see that, and now I can see it, and I understand your perspective, and I'm going to come up. Like, you'll hear judges, sometimes they'll stick to their opinions because they haven't been moved. Sometimes they'll move because of it. This is all the way the process works. And it's really, really great. But the whole point is, we want each image to get the score that it should get. And you know what? We want each image to do really well. There's no judge who's going, I can't wait for the next image to come up so I can slam it. Like, that's not how it works. We're all really excited to see the images that are coming, and we want the best for those images and for the photographers as well. So that's one of the best parts of having that conversation and a challenge, is it just, the entire panel gets to learn more about an image using the perspectives of the different judges, so we understand it better. And then we can rescore and hopefully give that image a score that's closer to its its correct value, if that's a word. It probably isn't a word. And save me from my saying correct value with, you get your hand up. Have you got anything you want to add?
It's just a quickie, and the first one is a tip, and it's like, zoom in. If you are a creative portrait person or you create collage, zoom in and make sure that your editing is perfect. It may look good from a distance. When you zoom in, there's something that's going to show up. And the second one is take a chance. And this is a story about you, Chris, because I remember going back a couple of years, I was sitting in a room, I was chairing, you were judging in the next room, and your picture came up and you'd stuck puzzle pieces onto a portrait. And it just created a huge wow, and the emotion in the room. There were cheers. I don't know how you carried on judging in the room next door, because you could hear that it was your image, but you took a chance, and it was the impact that we've never seen anything before. It could have gone either way. But it was a winner for you. I don't know how you felt about that, but that's something that I'm sitting here remembering now, years on. And I'm a menopausal woman who can't remember what my name is yesterday. But remembering that, it was just, wow. How'd you
I
feel?
I can remember that really clearly because I was judging and an image had come up, and I'm looking at the image, and, you know, you sit down and you're thinking, and this, everyone, this isn't a print awards thing. So there's multiple rooms side by side, and you can kind of hear people talking in the next room. And I was busy formatting the thing I was going to say if a comment came my way. And then I heard Gary Hughes, an American judge who is part of our judging team this year. He said something like, oh, the audacity of someone to put puzzle pieces. And my brain just went, oh no, that's mine. So I'm trying to keep my poker face and stay controlled as a judge. And I think I did an okay job, but it was pretty good. For every risk that pays off, there are multiple risks that don't. And we don't talk about those so much in open company, but, you know, there's a lot of failures behind the ones that work out really well. Thank you for telling that story. That's gone back a couple years, but that's pretty good. Mel Sinclair, I would love to hear a little bit from you. One of the things that can be a challenge for entrants is understanding, when you go to submit your image, what the post-production levels are like. Like, every single one of our categories has a specific amount of post-production that's allowed. So could you spend a couple of minutes talking through kind of the different tiers of post-production and what it means for each category?
Absolutely. So I guess one of the unique things about the Australian Photographic Prize, at least to me and some of the other categories, competitions that I enter, is that the Australian Photographic Prize has different post-production levels, and they're assigned to different categories. So, for example, we have single capture post-production group, which is all about celebrating the authentic capture as it was. And that's applied to certain categories like birds and a few others. So, you know, for those kinds of categories, you need to sit down and have a look at the rules document, because it defines what you can and can't do within the post-production of the images that you enter into that category. And we've tried to define this really clearly, and I think we've hit the nail on the head, but, you know, this is a competition. So please do have a read. For example, you know, so we've written, you know, single capture post-production celebrates photography where the integrity and the authenticity of the original capture is preserved. So we're looking at things like documentary, and there's a couple of like wildlife. You're going to test me on the spot here to try to remember which category has which post-production group in it, but please do read the rules, because below each category is a definition of what the rule set for post-production is. in that category. We also have the classic post-production group, which allows some editing. Again, you really do need to preserve the original intent of the image here. There are some techniques that do allow you to beautify the image and polish it up a little bit, but you still can't really do any composites or anything. But you can do things like monochrome conversions and color retouching and color correction and all of that. So you'll see classic, for example, the classic wedding is a classic rule set for that. So sometimes the category name gives a bit of a hint as to what level of post-production you can employ with your images there. And then of course we have the open category, and that's kind of open slather really. There is still some rules there, of course, and you still do have to play within that 5-year rule, except for the photographic artist category. That's got a bit of a unique definition on time of capture for photographic artists. So I do actually read that in depth if you are going to enter photographic artist. But in open, obviously, full range of post-production, manipulation, compositing, and stuff like that. So definitely do have a look, and also consider that maybe if you have an image that you really, really, really want to enter, do actually go back through your edit process and see what you've done to it, and make sure it fits within that rule. You may need to go back to the drawing board and reprocess an image to fit the category rules, and consider that also in the time that you've got before you submit your entries. So do go through and have a really in-depth read. And if you have any questions, please reach out. We will always try and help you out prior to competition closing. After it closes, we probably can't help you, but definitely do reach out and have a big read of all these rules, because we really want to try and champion authentic photography where it is truly authentic. We want to celebrate creativity where it is truly creative. So really do read those rules and understand them, and reach out if you have any questions.
So if anyone has questions, probably the two best ways to do it. One is to email, I guess it's hello at australianphotographicproducts.com.au,
Yep.
Or you can post into the community channel as well if you want to. And often people who post a question, if you have a question, other people might have the same question too. So if you want to raise questions there, that's okay. Mel, tell me about AI usage, generative AI in particular. Like that's become something every competition is thinking about, what's allowed and what's not. So where do we sit with that?
Putting me on the spot here, test my knowledge. Generative AI, I would say is a no. And I'm fairly confident in saying that's a no, because you are calling on something else to determine what the fill for those pictures are going to be. However, if it's AI using your own pixels or intention, like from your own source work or from somewhere in the image, I do believe that's okay. I'm going to put a little star in that, saying in this moment that I'm on the spot, my brain is kind of going, eh.
All right, let me take you off the hook. So
Yeah.
if you're using tools like an AI masking tool where you're trying to cut something out and it's detecting the edge, that's totally fine. And there's all kinds of AI stuff in our cameras now anyway. You can't do anything without having artificial intelligence touch it. Where we are really drawing the line is generative AI. So if you are using AI to create an element or to create, and that could be creating an empty space behind something, that's not using pixels that were part of your original capture. And obviously, if you generate an entire image out of, as a generative AI image, that's not going to be valid, but that also goes for components within an image as well. Now, it's not just generative AI. Like, you can't use stock photography. You can't use a photo that someone else has taken. So, let's say you have an image and there's a table and you want to put a coffee cup on it. You can't go and buy a stock image of a coffee cup. You can't go and generate it. You can't get your buddy to take a picture of a coffee cup and put it on there. It's got to be something that you've taken. And then if it's in that single capture or classic categories, it's got to be something you took as part of that frame as well. So generative AI very much fits into that mold. Again, if you have questions about it, please raise it. And there definitely are some gray areas. Like, once you get into AI noise reduction, some tools will use generative techniques to put elements back, and sometimes it can do that in a way that is entirely disrespectful to the original thing that was captured. So if in doubt, raise it as a question with us. Johan, speaking of raising hands, Johan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so exactly that question. So, I've got 4 stray people in a photograph. I want to remove them. and I removed them using an AI tool.
Mhm.
And it fills in the background with what's already there. Is that in or out?
So I I would say if you're using a context-aware fill in Photoshop, that is okay. If you're using a generative fill, it is not okay. Um, Generative fill is creating something that might not be there. The number of times, like, have you ever seen those things where someone's like they're holding an apple and you say use generative fill to get rid of it and it replaces it with a Rubik's cube. You know, what is creating stuff that wasn't there before? That's the thing that we're trying to avoid. So um, context-aware fill in Photoshop does draw from existing pixels that are in your composition already. So it's similar to cloning it out manually, I suppose, is how you'd look at it. Now we're at a point with this generative AI where there's all kinds of edge cases. So if you aren't sure, please ask. That's probably the safest thing. Now we've had a couple of questions come up in the chat, which is really good. So the first one, I'm going to go to, actually, Johan, I'm going to go to you on this because you talked about this before. So we've got a question, which is how do you differentiate a creative choice from a perceived imperfection? It's a really good question, and it absolutely is in the neighborhood of something you were speaking about before. So as a judge, where do you draw the line to say this is an imperfection versus a creative choice?
If something has been overdone, and vignetting is probably an easy example where it might be a creative choice to vignette an image to make you focus on a particular area. But if it's done heavy-handedly and it's a vignette for no purpose other than to be a vignette, then that's a bad choice, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an answer to that question?
I think it is, but Lisa's got her hand up, so I think we're going to look for her to save you. And come on in, Lisa.
Oh, Johan, thanks for the lead in. I suppose for me, leading on from what we were talking about earlier about, where do you land between technical versus creative? And I think they just simply serve each other. So I think if the vignette is serving the emotional and so the technical or the treatment actually serves and contains the emotion, the concept. For me, everything is conceptual. I'm absolutely driven by the concept. So something that I would think that I would be able to perceive an error because it doesn't fit the concept. So every element earning its place, the post-production treatment earning its place, the composition, the framing. And when I'm absolutely stuck, I always refer back to Stephen Shaw, his seminal work, The Nature of Photographs. And there are 4 things that we look for. So vantage point. So where was the photographer standing? What is the viewpoint? What is the frame? Is it a passive or an active frame? Is what's in the frame to tell us that there's something wider in the frame, or has the work been framed so it's actually a world or a universe to itself? And then we have the moment of exposure, the moment of capture, which you could refer to and extend a little bit out to shutter speed and the treatment of time. And then we also have our plane of focus, so depth of field. And if all of those come together, imperfections very quickly rise to the surface because they don't fit into that. The conceptual nature of the work doesn't work. It's not resolved. So for me, if you can't resolve something, it is more than likely an imperfection. And we can't really then take that on board as judges and absorb it. And I think Johan even used the word forgiveness, or Angela may have used the word forgiveness earlier. Even Dario may have mentioned that as well.
It is hard because as a judge, you don't know the photographer's their intent. Sorry, you don't know. You're trying to guess about the choices that they're making, and you're doing it on balance of probability of the image that you're looking at. So you do have to reach as a judge to understand. So it ends up being a value judgment, and again, that's one of those areas where you can have judges that disagree with things.
I don't think it's a value judgment. I think it's often the strength of the visual language, or the visual language that's been chosen by that photographer. So the vignette, we know what a vignette does. Do you mean it drives and draws attention? It stops us from seeing the whole frame. It's conveying something, it's communicating. Everything you do in your work is a piece of visual language, it's a piece of visual grammar. So we're just unpacking that grammar. And like you say, Chris, we are trying to make the sentence, we're trying to draw the meaning, draw the concept. But I don't think we're necessarily guessing. And I think the successful images where the grammar is universal, cohesive, and it's speaking to as many people as possible. And even if it isn't, there's still enough in there for judges that are leaning to the technical, leaning to the emotional, to grab concept. I really don't want, I don't want it to ever come across that as a judge I'm trying to second guess the entrance work. I'm simply reading with openness and joy and delight and suppleness what they're giving us. So I hope that's clarified that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the things about a challenge process as well, is you might understand that visual language and begin a challenge, and someone else might not have understood it as clearly. And once you can talk about it and explain it, now the whole panel has a better understanding. And that's a really good thing. We've got a question from Frank in the chat. So I'm just going to read this out. For images being entered, is it recommended not to post it on social media platforms? Should it be kept for the competition only so it hasn't potentially already been seen by a judge? That's a really good question. Ange, I would love for you to talk about this, because I was going to ask you anyway, and I saw you nodding. So let's hear what you have to say about
well,
that.
it was Johannes and I were both sitting there going, it's about impact. If someone has seen that image on social media, you've taken the impact away from the impact in the composition. I'd say keep it close to your chest. Make that image the first time it's seen when you enter it into a competition. This may change if you're doing panels or qualifications or whatever, but yeah, don't dilute your impact. I can't say that enough. It's really, really important. And that also feeds into what we were saying earlier about don't dilute your impact by putting similar images in.
Yep, excellent. Johan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and the trouble if it comes up on social media is quite often it comes with an explanation, and that can dilute the impact as well.
Yep, that's true. All right, I'm going to wrap this up in about 10 minutes. Now, before we wrap up, there's two things that I want to do. Johan, we're going to finish with you, and we have an absolute treat for anyone listening. So that's what we're going to finish with. But before that, just to kind of wrap up, I would love all of you judges, I'm going to ask you for one piece of advice that you would give an entrant. Now, one of the things that we ask our judges, we ask you to be entrants. Like when you're a judge, it's important for you to know what it feels like to be an entrant, what it feels like to have judges give you a high score or a low score and go through the whole process. It's important so that you can be empathetic, which means we've all learned things as judges, and that correspond to us being entrants as well. And I'm looking for one little nugget of advice. And if you want to repeat something we've already talked about tonight, you can go for it. If you've got something you want to add, that's good too. I'm going to try and hit you all up. So we'll see how we go. Dario, my Commodore 64 sweater wearing friend, we're going to start with you. So have you got one piece of advice for entrants as they are approaching entering?
Yeah, I'd say look for the story and stay true to your heart. And there's a Latin motto which sounds like rem tene verba sequentur, which means stick to the subject, to the heart of the matter. You will find the words. And in our visual world, it means that if you have something to say, if you have the creative idea, you will find and you will hustle and work hard to find the visual way to narrate that story and, let us, absorb it and possibly come back with a feedback. And so that's my tip. Rem tene verba sequentur. Google it.
All right. I have zero chance of remembering that, Dario. So thank you for that. Excellent. Faru, have you got a piece of advice for entrants?
Yes, don't let your work for last minute to finish an enter, because always your work need to a bit of time to be put it aside. Sometimes for a few days don't look at it, but then get back, look at it. If it possible, print it, put it somewhere, and just keep looking at it. So you will find what's powerful in your image, what's weakness in your image that you have to fix it up. And yeah, don't let it for last minute.
That's good advice. Um, Speaking as someone that has entered last minute and has been worried about running out of time, I can appreciate that. Johan, you got one last piece of advice for anyone? You got to come off mute. That's the third time. We only have three. I said there'd be three. That was it.
Oh no. I just wanted to read that thing.
Oh, not yet. That's coming. That's gonna be last. We're looking for advice.
Okay,
now.
so that piece of advice is make your images rich with feeling.
Like, excellent advice. Ben's making that face like, I like that advice. All right, Ben. So I'm watching Ben nod at every bit of advice going, oh, he stole the thing I was going to say. So it's time for you to get in the queue, Ben. What's your last piece of advice?
Just want to counter what Farouk said. I always enter last minute, every single time. But yeah, listen to Farouk, don't listen to me. My piece of advice is to question your motives as to why you're entering the awards. For me, I guess I've always gone into it with a really open mind, and I've always come out with more than I came in expecting. I didn't really expect very much, but I came out of the other end, and I've learned so much over my whole journey of entering competitions massively. Like, it's impacted in such a positive way my entire career. Like, I can't, I wouldn't be still here today doing photography if it wasn't for the awards. And so I think, if you just want to win awards, then that's great. But I think to grow as a photographer, to grow as an artist, or even a commercial photographer, just ask yourself what your motives are.
I would wager most of us wouldn't be a photographer today without entering awards and going through the process of having your work kind of, curating it and making it as strong as possible. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Was that you, Diana?
Yeah. I was just going to say, no matter how you do, whether you do really well or not well at all, look at it as a big learning curve, because it's going to change who you are as a photographer, and it's going to make you think every time you hit the shutter and every time you do a bit of post-production. So if you don't do well, don't go away thinking, oh no, I'm a failure. Go away, no, I'm learning. And don't just learn from your image. Sit and watch everything and learn from everybody's image, because that's huge.
100%. I think a lot of people have said, like, watching live image judging or print judging is some of the best photography education you can get, and learning from other people's is massive. Lisa's waiting very patiently for her turn, and Ange probably knew I was going to make her go last, but go for it, Lisa.
Firstly, agree with everything that everyone has just said. For me, the biggest piece of advice I have, and it's something I ask every image when I'm judging, is, has every element earned its place in your frame? And by that I mean, does every element support the conceptual strength of your image? And that's what I'm looking for.
Excellent. Awesome. Mel, I forgot to include you in my list so you got some advice.
Yes. If you have a strong series, pick one image of that series. If you enter multiple, it will, or may highly likely, dilute that impact. So if you're absolutely in love with something, pick your strongest image and just put that forward. Back yourself.
Excellent. All right, Ange, final piece of advice for everyone.
Okay, so just do it. Put your B+ work forward, because it will never be perfect. And this feeds into my last piece of advice: is the only person you should really be in competition with is yourself. So don't judge yourself against anybody else. Put that picture in this year, and if it gets a score of 69, brilliant, that's amazing. Put something in next year and you want to beat 69. Perhaps you want a 75, and just continue being in competition with yourself and make it fun.
That's awesome advice, Ange. Thank you. All right, everyone. This has been, like, unexpectedly a very cool night. So I know we all joined in thinking we were going to be critiquing images, and I'm a little bit sad we haven't had the chance to see your images, and we're going to get that chance in a critique very soon. But Instead, we've been able to pick people's brains, have a good chat about image selection, judging, the whole process behind things, get to know our judges a bit better. And hopefully this has been really valuable for you. I've had fun. This has been really great. We're going to finish with something unusual. So I'm pretty sure none of you at home tuned in thinking you were going to listen to a bunch of judges talk about random stuff, but I'll bet you weren't thinking you were going to get any poetry either. So one of our members here, Johan from New Zealand, something he's known for when you're at the Iris Awards physically in New Zealand from time to time is he will take the stage and he will read a poem. And so he's offered to finish us up tonight with a poem, and that's how we're going to wrap it. So, Johan, the stage is yours.
Thanks. This one's called The Judge's Prayer. What right do I have, looking, seeing, saying, to be the judgy one, applauding, critiquing, rewarding, to have an opinion? What right do I have to grade, mark, explain, to overwrite my thoughts, to use my own words on the works of others? Who am I, observer, analyst, speaker, to ask to be heard, impassioned, empowered, embracing, when I am not the artist? I am a voice, not a noise. I am experience, empathy, and energy. Without agenda, I am knowledge, heart, and assertion. Give me the grace to know my place as a judge.
Fantastic. Thanks, Johan. People will do a little bit of that. Yeah, excellent work. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in the most non-critiquey critique we've ever had. We will see you all soon for an actual print critique or an image critique. And until then, if you've got other questions, hit us up in the community page or email us, and we'll do everything we can to help you with getting your entries ready. So on behalf of everyone tonight, thanks very much for joining in, and we will see you next time. So thanks to, actually, before we go, judges, I need to say thank you. Angela Adams from the UK, Ben Liu from South Australia, Diana Fernie from South Australia as well. They live like 5 blocks away from each other. Dario Ruggiero from Italy, who has promised to make me a carbonara and has not done this yet. It is still on my list, my friend. Yavari from Victoria. We've got Johan from New Zealand, Lisa Kurtz from Queensland, Mel Sinclair, and I'm Chris Anderson. And we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone, and good night.
Introducing ISO Color Edge. Precision is essential for any professional working with images. Whether you're an artist, a retoucher, or a visual effects specialist, you need to know that what you see at the start of a project is precisely what you'll get at the end. Color Edge monitors give consistent, reliable accuracy that guarantee no surprises within your color workflow. So what you see in real life is what you see on screen, and what you see on screen is what you see in real life. That's precisely why professionals all over the world trust ISO Color Edge for their image creation. ISO Color Edge. Discover living, breathing color.
Wow, photographing the way I do, but with my colors, this will change everything.
I got to see each frame, each position of its wing, and they're so beautiful that I have never seen before.
Being able to move quickly and working at my brain's pace and getting those shots in the moment. Having this camera allows you to go out and create the way you want to create.
Until you use it, you cannot even imagine what you have missed.
It's It's something I've never seen before in my entire life. It's something totally different.
Nikon Z6 III. Outperform.